1, 2, 3 week periods where you get to know a founder and then you accept a term sheet, doesn't really accept the fact that it's a long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. And none of that, that's art. That's not science. That's not data. That's a relationship.
This is not your typical venture podcast. We assume the listener or the viewer can Google simple things like stage, industry focus, average check size, etc. Guests and interviewers do consume alcoholic drinks during the taping of our show. So we do so responsibly, and we ask that everyone do so as well. So let's begin.
Hello, and welcome to episode 18 of Drinks with a VC. Thanks for tuning in via whatever platform you are using. I am Vik, the co-founder and managing director of seed fund GreenCow Venture Capital, and I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-hostess with the mostest, Bree Vik. She leads up Burkland's biz dev. Burkland, if you don't know, is a wonderful firm that provides CFO services for technology startups. Hey, Bree, how you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. Thanks for asking.
So before we get started, as we've done with our previous episodes, we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the atrocities that are happening in the Ukraine. If you help, please join us in donating to the 1K project. 100% of your donation goes directly to a family in the Ukraine.
We highly encourage everyone in supporting this important cause. But now we are turning our attention to our next guest, who represents yet another first for us on this show. He's the first limited partner we've had on the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so pumped. We get to flip the script a little bit on this episode. So should I jump right into the intro, Bree?
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. So our next guest is an active philanthropist and has served on many nonprofit boards, including as the current chair of the Bay Area chapter of Goodwill. His illustrious career spans a spectrum of investments, from hedge funds to venture capital to real estate. He was previously the COO and general counsel of a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund called Eastborn Capital Management. He was a partner at Schartzis, Fries, and Ginsberg, where he was nationally recognized as a hedge fund and venture capital lawyer. He is a graduate of Stanford Law and of Wesleyan University. I know him, as most of my peers in the venture ecosystem do, as one of the most genuine, value-add and limited partners out there. It is my pleasure to welcome to the show the pride of Oceanside High School in New York and the head of the Sippel Farb family office, Eric Sippel. Hi, Eric.
Hey, how you doing? It's a little bit of pressure to be the first limited partner on the show, so thanks for having me.
It's good then that we're drinking. What are we drinking?
So I am drinking some whiskey from Salida, Colorado.
Oh,
all right. Bree, what do you got on tap?
I've got Four Roses, so just a straight Kentucky bourbon.
Okay. Well,
how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm working with Switchgrass Spirits, bourbon whiskey, and a little mixture with it that was done by, I think, 5 Jars here in St. Louis. I'm gonna get that right, and we'll put that in the description and the link in the episode. But to that note, cheers, Eric.
Cheers.
Ooh. So we had this concept that we were going to have Eric on towards the end of season 2, or at the beginning of season 3, but scheduling was hard, and for a good reason. Eric took a well-deserved sabbatical, and craziness. I mean, I'm kind of jealous, right? He went skiing in the Rockies, and then he traveled to Barcelona and Sicily.
Actually, that trip's coming up. I haven't.
Oh, is that trip coming up?
That one's coming up.
Okay. And going with your wife and sons, what's the plan?
So skiing in the Rockies in February was with my older son and his girlfriend. Barcelona and Sicily is just with my wife.
Excellent.
Nice.
And New York, I was in New York for the month of January.
And how was that? What was your go-to in New York?
Gosh. So I was helping my parents move out of the house I grew up in, and I lived in for 61 years into an apartment.
Wow.
And then I was helping my younger son move also from the West Coast to an apartment in New York. So there's a lot of moving.
Was there a lot of like walking through memory lane with like packing up all of your childhood memories? And I'm assuming donating to Goodwill as well.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But so, looking at all of my old Sports Illustrateds and my model trains and all of that stuff. Yeah, it was great. My New York Knicks yearbooks. It was very fun.
Very cool.
Do you feel like, I always get this way around nostalgic moments. Like, what did you keep from all of those things? Did you like take something back to Berkeley where you're at now, or?
I took my dad's slide rule.
Okay.
Oh, random.
Yeah.
Must have been something when you were growing up. You like math, right?
I do like math, and my dad used to always race me calculator versus slide rule, and he would always win.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And of course, it was before the time of spreadsheets or even PCs, so we didn't have that to compare it against.
Yeah.
How do you think that helped inform you later in your career?
Slide rule versus calculator?
Yeah.
Oh God. I gotta be honest, I don't think it did.
You didn't get really good at math? That didn't like make you some sort of math genius?
Oh, being good at math, how that informed my career, that's totally different than the slide rule versus calculator question.
Well, I just assumed that got you really good because you're trying to beat your dad.
Oh, I don't know if it got me good. I suppose it would humble me, right? That's helpful.
Yeah.
The math thing was always good because it's just a different way of thinking logically. That was really helpful, that I really got out of math.
Oh.
And working through problems and like knowing that there was going to be a solution, but that you had to go through 10 steps to get there. That was very fun.
We've had a lot of folks on the podcast that are they love reading, right? And I think you love reading as well. Yeah. I don't think we've had anyone on the podcast answer our questionnaire and our question about what your favorite book is. And to our audience, Eric put down high school calculus textbook as his most influential book.
My favorite book was my most influential.
Influential.
So that's different.
That's true. That's fine. That's true. But typically it's something different, right?
I understand.
So you have to explain that. You have to explain that to us.
I must have been the mood I was in at the time, but I guess I'd say two things. One is, as I was telling Bree before, there's just sort of a logical way of thinking and problem solving that I got out of calculus that has stayed with me, that problem solving throughout my career, which has been great. And the second thing is really, so this was in high school, it was an AP class, and it allowed me, gave me the confidence that, I could think at a college level, I could do stuff that they do in college. Yeah. And, so it was, I think those are the reasons why I see it as, sort of the most influential. It's sort of really a springboard to where I ended up, which was really spending my life solving problems.
But let me get this straight. You were a college student and teaching calculus to other college students. Is that right?
Yeah. So, it was really weird. And that's, I hope that no one from Wesleyan is listening to this.
Yeah.
Because they'll be appalled by what I'm about to say. I showed up at college, freshman orientation. You have to take placement exams to place out of whatever class out of calculus if you did well on the AP exam. I did that. A buddy of mine who was a junior at the school said, hey, we need TAs in the math department in calculus. Do you want to be a TA? So as a freshman, I'm like, yeah, you're going to pay me to like help other students and do something that I already know? Sure, I'm in. And it turned out that they were short one calculus teacher that first semester that I showed up on campus. And my buddy Eddie was asked to teach that class, and he said, "Well, can I do it with another TA?" And they said, "Sure." So Eddie said to me, "Hey, Eric, do you want to do you want to teach this class?" And I'm like, "Of course, that sounds really fun."
Yeah.
And the problem with it was that Eddie was the upperclassman, so he realized early on that he could just give everything to me. So I basically ended up teaching the class, and Eddie like showed up maybe a quarter of the time. And, one of my freshman roommates was in the class. It was really weird, but I was teaching calculus as a first semester freshman in college at a liberal arts school where they pride themselves on a really low faculty to student ratio.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I went to Wesleyan rival, particularly in squash, which I played, but at Vassar. So, same way, right? We were priding ourselves on this low teacher to student ratio, but we had a lot of TAs.
I could only imagine what the freshman students and freshman calculus were telling their parents. Yeah, this other freshman's teaching the class. I could only imagine. I would have been appalled if I was the parent.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to influences. I want to talk a little bit about the influences that you had growing up. You actually count your grandfather, Sam Kaufman, as one of the people that you admire most. Tell us about him and what influence he had on you.
So he was born in 1905 in the Ukraine. Wow. And he escaped from the Ukraine when he was 12 or 13. So what would have that been, 1917-ish?
Yeah.
He escaped religious persecution. He actually told me a story where he was basically running through the forest and trying to dodge bullets while he was running through the forest. So it was like really like him coming over here was like, and all my grandparents escaped religious persecution from Eastern Europe. Yeah. But that was like really impactful. And then his entire life was a small business entrepreneur. So he owned a fish store, which is why my mom hates fish to this day, because he's smelling like fish. He owned a car wash. He owned a liquor store. Lots of different things in Brooklyn, New York, to really ascend into what I will call the lower middle class. At the same time that education was so important in the family that both my mom and my uncle went to college, got master's degrees and the like. And, so that kind of that entrepreneurial spirit, that escaping from the Ukraine, escaping religious persecution, that whole thing, it was a really strong influence for me.
Wow.
You grew up in Oceanside, New York, which to our audience, it's east of JFK airport and Hamlet, right on the water.
Well, it's one of those misnomers. It's kind of like Greenland. It's about 5 or 10 minutes from the ocean.
Okay.
It's miles away from the ocean.
Got it.
There's a canal where the sewage goes through. That's
goes to those. Cheers to that. What was it like growing up in Oceanside back in the day then?
Oh, it was. I mean, I can't imagine a better upbringing because it was just very solid middle class without an attitude. Yeah. The town was probably 45% Jewish, which I am, 45% Italian, and 10% Irish, and all very gray collar. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a school teacher. There were lots of firemen and policemen, and this was back before professional basketball was a real money generating thing. So there were several former professional basketball players in town. who were then gardeners and the like. My high school basketball coach was former New York Knick, who then became a gardener because, of course, he didn't have any money. So it was just, it was growing up in a way that, you had to earn it, but it was a good community. It was a really good community.
Part of that community, I'm assuming, is where you found your love of pizza.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you had a slice of pizza?
No, because I can't imagine. I have a lot of memories from back then. It would have been like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
What's the best pizza in New York?
The best pizza in New York. Oh gosh, see, I'm so partial to the corner slice shop, with the greasy cheese and all of that. So that's my favorite kind of pizza, not the fancy kind.
Yeah,
I guess my favorite pizza place is on the corner of 24th and 2nd. I don't even remember the name of it, but it's because that was right across the street from where I used to live in New York. And used to have pizza there all the time. And every time I go back to New York, it's still there. I always have a slice there. I think it's called Mike's, but I'm not sure.
Do you? How do you eat your pizza? It's
you have to fold it, and you have to hold it down like this so that the grease or like
okay.
that.
So you drain it first. You don't dab. You drain, and then
I drain,
you fold.
But I don't drain with napkins. I drain with the fold and the tilt.
Okay. And then to this day, do you believe, and the reason why I ask this, because now that I've moved to the Midwest, this idea, this question of who makes the best pizza has really intensified. So you've got Chicago, you've got New York.
Might be in Portland.
Wow. Okay. Now my mind is blown. Why?
I can't even remember the pizza places. So my son lived in Portland for 4 months, and so we were up there a lot. And but I think the most consistent best pizza was up in Portland.
Wow.
Interesting.
Okay, I would not have guessed that. You're right next to Zachariah's.
Zachary's Pizza, which is great.
Zachary's, yep, that's right.
Although I have to tell you, the pizza here in the Bay Area is not up to snuff. It's just not.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I would agree, which is why we are going to give you your first gift on Drinks with the VC, not the one we sent you, but a digital gift, which is a Gold Belly gift card, so that you can order pizza outside the Bay Area, because we agree.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. You'll have that in your inbox.
Absolutely. I swear, I thought we were going to have a real battle between New York style pizza, Chicago style pizza, and the Bay. But
so
you came out of left field with the Portland.
So if you want to have a battle, New York is definitely better than Chicago or the Bay Area. But the Bay Area is like 10th or 12th on the list. So
yeah,
I mean, that's
not
even
good.
worth the conversation. But Connecticut pizza is fabulous. I was in Philly a couple of weeks ago. They have great pizza. I mean, there's like great pizza all over. It's hard to screw up cheese and dough and sauce. It really is. Right.
It is. Well, it is. It is. And so when you're heading to Italy, are you going to go to Naples and have a Neapolitana, or
no, we're just going to be in Sicily.
Just going to be in Sicily. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Ooh,
excellent. Well, when you're in Spain, you've got to drink out of a porron. We just did an episode.
I have one right here
where Bree was drinking out of a porron.
Okay.
And
oh wow. Okay.
So you've got this long bottle with the water jug nozzle to it, and typically it's filled with wine.
Okay.
Who knows what Bree's drinking out of it right now?
It's what was from the last Drinks of the VC. I'm like, get it away from me! It's old.
All right. I got it.
So buried in a lot of conversations that you've had about your rubric and about your investment strategy is a little known fact about you, that you were a youth soccer coach.
About me, let's just be clear. But anyway, this one.
a little known fact that we found after doing a lot of digging. You were a youth soccer coach for the East Bay Soccer Club for 15 years.
Yes.
That's not a small period of time. That's a very long period of time. How did that come about?
So, and in addition to which, I was also president of the club for 6. And so I have a whole bunch of PTSD around being the president of the club. And so if you see me shudder a little bit as we talk about the soccer experience, that is where it comes from. So I started coaching because my older son, who's now 26, started playing. And when he was 5 years old, he was playing and his coach refused to tie his shoes. And so, and by the way, I used to play a lot of soccer. And so his coach refused to tie his shoes. And I thought, I think there's a better way to coach soccer. And that includes figuring out a way to get the shoes tied. And so when he turned 6, I decided to coach him and coached him for 6, 7 years. And it clearly advanced past shoe tying. And then, and I coached my younger son for a little bit, but, for the last 8 or 9 years of coaching, maybe 7 years of coaching, I was coaching other people's kids, but that's how it started. It was with shoot.
And it was also kind of it's also where you suffered maybe your most embarrassing moment, as you suggested to us. Can you explain to our audience what happened at I want to say it was the state cup match against a rival?
Oh yeah, so I was not coaching my kids at the time, thankfully. But I spent a lot of my years, and just to put in perspective, so our club was fabulous. It was 3,000 kids. It had every ethnicity because we were really rooted in Oakland. And so we had every ethnicity in the world, and we had every level from the very highest level to the very lowest level of soccer. And we had, we fed into the U.S. Development Academy. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So I was coaching this team. It was a group of 8-year-olds. So it was U9, and it was at the highest level of U9. And so you can imagine. And these were kids who had any of these kids who decided they were going to play college soccer will have played college soccer. They're that good.
That good, yeah.
But they were 8, so they weren't that good. And most of those kids have dropped out of playing soccer by now. So let's just put it all in perspective. Anyway, I was coaching, and it was in overtime, and one of our players dribbled the length of the field and scored a goal. And so we went ahead by a goal. I don't remember what the score was, probably like 5-4 or 10-9 or something.
Yeah.
And I thought it was sudden death. And I was so excited. I thought it was like Jim Valvano. And so I'm running around on the field looking for a hug. And the ref blows the whistle and says, all right, your team lost because you went on the field. And it's not sudden death. You actually have to like make it to the end of the overtime.
Yeah.
And so I had to go to the parents, and I had to tell all the parents, like, guys, we lost. We didn't win because I screwed up and I ran on the field and violated this rule that I had never heard of. And so we lost the match. And, we had these 8-year-olds who were crying. The parents were understanding. They actually liked the idea that I fessed up. But, yeah, that was embarrassing.
Wow. Did that the end of your coaching career, or did you
No, that did
to
not
coach?
end my coaching career. So unlike in professional sports where you get fired for something like that,
yeah,
I continued coaching for a few years.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, that's exactly the way that I would feel like you would deal with adversity. So good on you for that. Did you enjoy coaching kids more than you did playing the game?
So coaching kids was definitely more fun than playing the game.
Yeah.
coaching parents was so much less fun than playing the game that in the aggregate, playing the game was way more fun than coaching.
So what are some lessons learned from coaching kids?
So you have to explain things really clearly. So if you, for example, in one situation, we had a corner kick, which means that we were, near the goal. And I told one of our players to go to the middle, and so he went to the center circle. And so you have to be really clear about things. Yeah. You have to be really positive. And so, I mean, and this is true whether you're dealing with founders or GPs or other board members or whatever it is. You have to catch people being good. You can't be a stream of criticism. And so that when you actually have something constructive to say, then they'll hear it, because otherwise they won't have the brain space to hear it. Yep. And so that's really important. Another thing is you have to understand that no one's perfect. I mean, so I spent a lot of my years coaching 7 and 8 year olds, and so clearly they were never perfect. But you just have to understand that it's never going to go as planned, and that resilience is really important, and that it's sort of like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a game plan until you get punched in the mouth. Mm. You have to be able to adapt and change. So those are, I think, some of the lessons learned.
You brought a lot of that positive thinking and criticism and constructive thinking to the world of philanthropy and your philanthropic pursuits. We've touched on one of them in our introduction, you being on the board and the chair of the Bay Area Goodwill, but you've been a part of a lot of other fantastic profit and for-profit and nonprofit organizations. I'd love to just kind of learn about what pushed you to that and what created that energy towards kind of giving your time that way.
So, and I don't mean to sound like I'm always quoting people, but Muhammad Ali said, service to others is the rent you pay for your place on earth. The way I want to be remembered is the person who always trying to give back and help others. Whether that's individually on a one-on-one basis or on the board or chair of a nonprofit or whatever it is. I just think it's really important to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also interested in kind of what drives you in each one of those. So I know you've done a lot of different philanthropy work. For instance, your work at Goodwill. What drew you to Goodwill specifically?
Well, there's sort of two parts to the answer, but the first part is our CEO has been a friend of mine for almost 20 years and is maybe the best leader I know and is inspirational, but also the mission. What we're doing, actually 3 parts to the answer. The second is the mission, what we're doing. Most people don't understand actually what Goodwill does. I mean, I'm not going to embarrass the two of you and ask you if you know what we do, because I'm sure you'll get the answer wrong. All right, Vic, what's our mission?
So I might be wrong about this, but the concept of everyone should have clothing, shelter, food. I think Goodwill tries to cover certainly the clothing aspects of it, the quality of life aspects of things, to get people more prepared to to have items to enter in the workforce, other things of that nature. Am I completely off base?
So you were starting down the path, and
then I veered.
The right answer. I thought you were going to be in the 1%.
The
right answer, but no, you're in the 99%. And
man. Okay.
So, our primary mission is to provide jobs and job training for people who have barriers to employment, who need second chances. People who are formerly incarcerated, recovering addicts, vets, and the like. And so, we have this social enterprise. Bay Area Goodwill employs almost 1,000 people of the who fit this background, and they and we have warehouses, truck drivers, people who work in stores, people work in e-commerce. We have a full-on business, and all of those people have the background I described. And so it's really around, I think to be honest with you, I think it's the best way to solve homelessness is to make sure that everyone has a job. You can provide a man with the fish and he eats for a day. You can teach a man how to fish and he eats for life. That's what we do. And we also have a whole nother arm of our organization that provides job training. And so we train thousands of people a year for jobs and then place them. We currently have about 295 employer partners in the Bay Area that we place people in jobs with. So, that's, when I think about like going back to my grandfather, and people being employed, he was an immigrant, English as a second language. And how do you get people who are, who really can't just show up? Maybe they can now in an Amazon warehouse, but they can't just show up and get a job. They're right out of prison. And how do you get them so that they're not, they're providing for themselves? And so to me, that's that's the second thing that drew me to Goodwill, is that mission. The third thing that drew me to Goodwill was, we were a real turnaround situation. We, frankly, when I joined the organization, it was broken. We've since turned it around, and so I love challenges. And so that was a challenge that I really enjoyed being a part of.
I mean, we know because I'm a Bay Area native. Bree has lived in the Bay Area for quite some time now. We know that the Bay Area really suffers from, the unfortunate circumstances of not having the right infrastructure set up for housing, for jobs, et cetera. We have a lot of homelessness problems throughout the Bay Area, and the tech community kind of has its opinions, and a lot of times they're unpopular, and a lot of times they're blamed, rightfully or unrightfully so, for some of the problems with infrastructure and the disparity and of wealth, et cetera. So what's your take on that, and where you stand on the side of how we can work on that situation, obviously through Goodwill, and then is there some sort of solution through technology and through that ecosystem?
So, it's a complicated answer to a question.
Yeah.
I think the tech community is clearly part of the solution, not part of the problem. Let's start there. And as an example, Google, Microsoft, Lincoln, which is obviously a subsidiary of Microsoft, Amazon, and a few and other tech companies are real supporters of Bay Area Goodwill. And so, a shout out to them. They're really community minded. But I'm also very much a believer in supply and demand, and we need more housing supply. And the fact that there's more demand for housing because there's a particular sector that is really popular out here, that's not the sector's fault. That's fine. And we have to figure out ways, as I said, Goodwill helps to do this through job training and providing jobs. I think we need to do more of that in society. We need to build more housing. The permitting process in the Bay Area is ridiculous to build new housing. If you build more housing, you will have more housing for low-income people. I think you should build affordable housing too. The ability to build affordable housing is too difficult. We're thinking about a project at Goodwill that I think will be too difficult to do. That will be building housing. in the city of Oakland. And notwithstanding the fact that, the city of Oakland politicians, I think, will be for it, I just think that it's too dangerous to go down the path because I just think it's too hard to get things built. And this would just be for Goodwill employees to live in our housing. We're not talking about, for-profit housing. And there are all sorts of other ways that tech companies can get involved in terms of partnering with, well, Goodwill, of course, but other nonprofits that can help, that can provide, can really provide infrastructure for those nonprofits. There's just a lot. There's just, if you want to help, reach out to me, and I'll be able to kind of try to connect the dots, because there's a lot of ways that tech companies and founders can help.
Yep.
And selfishly, I'll look for Goodwill first.
Well, we encourage the audience to donate your time, your goods, and your money to Goodwill of San Francisco, which we did. On your behalf, we decided to donate and wanted to encourage others to do so. Really, really glad that you're donating so much of your time to so many nonprofits. And really want to encourage our audience to do the same. It's, you can give your money, but giving your time is even more valuable, especially to our audience, I hope.
Thank you.
So we're going to switch directions a little bit now. Yes, you've dedicated a lot of time to hedge fund world, to real estate, but you've stated that you spend an exorbitant amount of time,
on probably 90% of my time in venture these days.
In venture, and you started managing venture investments, and you hilariously self-proclaimed yourself not very good at it. What about venture investing did you find the hardest?
Oh gosh. So I've been investing in the venture space for more than 25 years.
Yep. I
became the COO of Eastborn Capital, as you mentioned at the outset. That was a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund. And we dabbled in venture. And I was, as the chief operating officer, I was in charge of our venture arm and sat on a few boards of portfolio companies. And as I mentioned to you, we were uniquely bad at it. And as a result, I'm a huge believer in knowing what your strengths are, but also knowing what you don't know and not doing what you don't know. So I have strong opinions, for example, on family offices investing in SPVs and directs and things like that. That's not the question you asked me. But the biggest lesson learned for me is if the deal was coming to us, there was a reason. There were a lot of really good venture capital firms. This is back in the 2000s. There's still a lot of really good venture capital firms. So it was coming to us. It wasn't because we were the smartest people around. There was something wrong with it. And so we, our track record on the venture side, thankfully, was a tiny piece of our portfolio. It was less than 3% of our portfolio. But we were in the bottom decile.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
Given the fact that you were this math wonderkind, and maybe you still are, right?
Wonderkind's the wrong word. I like math.
You liked math. Do you feel like the advancements in portfolio construction and the tools that investors use, particularly, on data kind of driven evaluation of companies, do you think using those you could have been more successful today?
No, not chance.
Okay.
So let's talk about venture as opposed to public equity.
Totally different. Yes.
In venture, art than science. How much value can you add to a company? That's not quantitative. that's about, whether you can add value, which, by the way, we added virtually none as board members. How strong is the founder? How much grit and resilience does the founder have? Is there early product market fit? Those are not things that you can figure out quantitatively. I mean, there's anyone who's good at venture capital knows that early stage venture capital is not data driven. It's driven by, understanding and recognizing and analyzing what you have in front of you, and understanding, and in particular, investing is about doing things that are unpopular or unloved or undiscovered. It's not about doing a Me Too kind of thing, because that's already priced in. And that's not in the numbers. So no, I mean, it's like, no, data would not have helped improve us. I mean, other than, I suppose there's only one place to go but up. So other than that, no. I mean, data, actually, I take it back, Vic. Data would have improved because it would have, we've made, but it would have stopped us from investing sooner.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate that transparency, by the way.
Don't do this.
Yeah, I appreciate that transparency, and I think at a time where everyone's trying to create an algorithm for just about everything out there, that you appreciate the artistry and the human aspects of venture investing.
Well, that is what venture is. It's about human connection.
Yeah,
it's about is there So I'm a big believer in VCs and founders taking a reasonably long period of time to get to know each other before a term sheet is accepted. I think that, and maybe in the last month or two, things are taking slightly longer, but these 1, 2, 3 week periods where, you get to know a founder and then you accept a term sheet doesn't really accept the fact that it's a long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. And none of that that's art. That's not science. That's not data. That's a relationship.
Yeah. You started investing in venture funds in the early 90s, and then officially out of the Sippel Farb family office in 2010. Since then, how many different funds approximately have you invested in?
So firms, not funds, about 37 firms.
Okay.
Multiple funds per firm.
Okay, fantastic. And for all of you that are wondering now, you're listening and you're saying, okay, where do we hit up Eric, and how does he evaluate companies? I will tell you, we're not going to cover the rubric, but Nick Moran at the Full Ratchet, his podcast, maybe 6 months ago or whatever it was, Eric goes through the whole rubric. In essence, he's looking for inefficient spaces, GP experience, the 3 S's of sourcing, selection, and stewardship, and portfolio construction. And I wanted to touch on kind of the second to last there, the 3 S's of sourcing, selection, and stewardship. You've underwritten a wave of operator founders turned investors. Yeah. What is it about those that specific group of GPs that has made them better at those 3 S's?
So they've lived the founder's journey. So if you look at an early stage company, a pre-seed, seed, even a series A stage company, there's so much that is unexpected that can sort of knock that company off of its center. That has nothing to do with the company. It's totally outside of its control. And having a founder on the cap table or an operator on the cap table that really gets along well with and relates to the founder, and that is really good at problem solving, that's how you change the probability. So if you look at the probability of success of an early stage company, it's really tiny.
Yeah.
How do you change that? How do you change the probability so they work in your favor instead of against it? And to me, it's about getting former operators and founders on your cap table who've been in the trenches, who've worked with venture capitalists, who can really then, help you solve problems and get you where you want to go. To me, that's the essence of all of it. And then, of course, once you develop that reputation and that network, other founders will seek you out. You'll get better deal flow. Other founders will be there for you when you want to, when you work on selection and diligence and analyzing companies, and they'll help you. But ultimately, the core is, how do you change the probability of success?
What do you think, how would you define stewardship? Because I love that that's part of your rubric. I just am curious how you would define it.
It's value add. It's how do you help the company succeed, whatever that takes. And so stewardship could mean that you are an expert in marketing, and particularly in go-to-market strategies. It could mean that you are really great at business development and you can help with strategy there, or you could have fabulous connections to customers, and so you can make great customer intros. It could mean that you're just really good on the phone at midnight to help, as a therapist, even though you're not trained as a therapist, to help calm a founder down when something's gone wrong. There's so many different possibilities that go into stewardship. It's a very broad range, but what it really means is an intention to helping. It's founder empathy at its core. It's helping the founder and helping the company succeed, as opposed to, I'm going to write a check and I'm going to go away and I'm going to be really quiet. I mean, there are plenty of people who do that really well. It's just not what I'm looking for. Yeah. And maybe it's about what makes me tick, which is always about helping other people. Mm-hmm. I want to see that in the GPs that I fund and I help help the founders.
Yeah. Speaking of people that write checks and then maybe don't add a lot of value, why are so many family offices and traditional institutional investor LPs doing more direct investments versus, backing this boom of emerging managers that we have?
Lower fees.
Yeah. Is it purely lower fees? Is that really it?
Well, either that or they just really, so obviously it's controversial what I'm going to say, but they believe their own bullshit. They think that they're better stock selecting companies than they actually are.
Yep. I
mean, why would somebody who invests in lots of asset classes and spends 10% of their time or 25% of their time, to be generous, investing directly in companies, be better than you? That's what, you're an expert at that. Why would they be better than you? They can't. And why would a deal come to them instead of, if it's then if it's going to Andreessen Horowitz or Tiger or anyone else like that? There's a reason why it's coming to you. I mean, it's like adverse selection. I don't know. So I think partly it's fees and partly it's ego.
Yeah. Do you feel like the venture landscape has evolved where, it's just so damn easy to get into an SPV on a late stage growth company that's about to pop and get an IPO, why invest in an emerging manager for the long haul, for the 7 to 10 year cycle, when you can get in an SPV with a quick pop?
Well, I mean, sure, if you're good at selecting them. So, when I was investing in venture in the late 90s, my primary strategy was investing in funds that did just that.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of money. It was great. And then the music stopped in March 13th of 2000, the NASDAQ started crashing.
Yep.
And the music stopped and the exits stopped in 2000. And so your music is going and you're circling around the chairs, you're fine.
Yeah. Speaking of the music and all of the noise, what do you think about VC Twitter?
So I follow VC Twitter.
Yeah.
So, and because some of the GPs where I've invested, I only follow the GPs that I have invested with.
Currently 146 people, by the way, Eric follows on Twitter. I'm not stalking you. I just know this number.
Oh, there you go. So I evidently I follow other people than the 37.
Yeah.
But 146 really low. So you'll admit that, right?
It is extremely low. You've curated your followers.
Yeah. Well, no, not my followers, but
the people you're following. Yes.
And no one follows me because I don't say anything interesting. But
like 116 people. I'm one of them.
Well done. Oh, I love this. Thank you. I had no idea. So this is cool.
We try.
Awesome.
You should, by the way, if anyone needs to do, just keep, you already are very good with having a very open filter for these kinds of things. If there was ever an invention where it could just take snippets of what you're thinking and put it on Twitter for the general population, I think you're one of the people that I would love for that to happen too. Because I feel like you tell it how it is and you're very straight with your commentary.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Anyway, what do I think of VC Twitter?
Yeah.
So I read it really to give me a sense of what's going on in the market. And it's really helpful.
Yeah.
To get a sense of, and things, I get a sense of without having to talk to anybody. I get a sense of what's going on this month versus in October. It's very different. So that's good. And yeah, I mean, I wish there, some of the people, they talk about stuff that I have no interest in. So I wish Twitter had a filter where I could say, only give me on my feed when they talk about X and not Y. But, it's fine.
You can join the board of Twitter.
Really opinionated, but I don't think that it's I'm sorry, what?
You should join the board of Twitter in that case.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I don't think that, if you're good at VC Twitter, it means you're a good venture capitalist. I mean, that's not part of my thinking at all.
Yeah.
There are some good people. There's some good venture capitalists who spend a lot of time on Twitter, and some good venture capitalists who don't. And some bad venture capitalists who spend a lot of time on Twitter. And I don't necessarily follow them because I believe that every GP I've invested with is a good venture capitalist. So,
yeah. And look, to be fair, not all VCs are on Twitter. They don't feel the need to actively, communicate via that platform. I think there are a couple of astute conversations where people say, VCs talk. They just don't always talk on Twitter. They talk on WhatsApp. Right. They talk at events. They talk one-on-one meetings. They're all over the place. I myself prefer to be a little bit more passive on Twitter and be behind the scenes. So there's that. But we're going to play a little game called Agree, Disagree. And here's the situation. So we're going to read you tweets from guests that we've actually had on the show. And we want your opinion on whether you agree or disagree.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, share your opinions. And we won't tell you the VC that has tweeted until
it's more about the thought. It's not. Some people have good thoughts and bad. Most people have good thoughts and bad thoughts. So the idea
everyone has good and bad thoughts, right? So Bree, do you want to read us the first tweet there?
Sure. It takes an underdog to recognize an underdog. We need more underdog VCs. Agree or disagree?
Disagree.
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 All right.
Okay, excellent. So
You don't recognize an underdog if you're not an underdog.
Oh, the first part of the premise is what you disagree with.
Yeah, we need absolutely agree with that. Disagree with the idea of it takes an underdog to recognize one.
okay. No, that's an important distinction. Okay, fantastic. All right. Recently, Bolt announced that they're acquiring Wire for $1.5 billion, presumably in Bolt stock. We had two VCs on our show that weighed in on this. The first said is valued at a 2021 level. Surprising that Wire would go for it. We will see more stock acquisitions from overvalued private companies. Another VC agreed. A new dawn of private reverse mergers and fintech companies pivoting to crypto, starting with Bolt acquiring Wire. Do you agree or disagree?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do I agree or disagree with what?
Yeah, are there going to be more private reverse mergers and activity, not just reverse mergers, but more private acquisitions with fintech companies pivoting to crypto?
So there will definitely be more private fintech companies pivoting to crypto.
Yeah.
Whether those are overvalued or not depends on the environment. The environment we're in right now is very different than perhaps when those comments were made. I don't know when those comments were made.
Yeah.
Totally agree that fintechs will pivot and incorporate crypto. I don't know if they'll pivot fully to crypto.
This brings about a follow-on question to you, which is, as an LP that spends so much time evaluating your GPs and tracking your GPs and being an active LP as an advisor, how into the weeds do you get into their theses and their the verticals that they're focused in? And for all of you in the audience, I think it's very well known that Eric doesn't like a generalist. He likes people that are very succinct and very thesis driven within a particular vertical or whatever it might be.
Right. It's definitely what I'm looking for is specialists, whether you're a specialist in a sector or specialist in immigration for helping immigrants to invest or whatever it is. So when I'm evaluating an investment, I try to get fairly deep to really understand if that sector is an interesting sector and can yield good returns. After that, when after I've made the investment, I put a different hat on, and the hat I put on is as a mentor and advisor. And whatever it takes to help the firm that I'm investing with is where I go. But naturally, I'll learn a lot more about what's going on. We started off this conversation with crypto. I am lucky enough to be both an LP and probably spend more of my time with this firm than any of the firms I spend time with the most active and the longest tenured, most experienced VC firm in the crypto space, Blockchain Capital. So, that's an example of a firm where I've definitely taken a long dive into. I talk to them every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Brad and Bart.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Bree, do you want to ask or relay the next tweet?
Sure. Very weird market dynamic right now where seed valuations have continued climbing while A and beyond valuations have fallen. Net, we're telling some founders to reposition their Series A as a seed, and it's working.
Yes, I agree with Sheil's tweet.
You know who that was.
Wow. So shout out to Sheil from Better Tomorrow Ventures, who
also where I'm an LP.
And you're an LP. Okay, so you're following him. Okay, fantastic.
Which is why I knew it.
Yes. So you agree we don't have to dig into it at all. All right, next one. I used to work with someone that never gave feedback. he emphasized that he noticed it decreased his chances of seeing the next round. I think he's right, but I still do it. And so, look, we're looking for an LP perspective on this as well. This is kind of a double.
So the tweet is, I don't give feedback anymore, and I disagree. You should always give feedback.
No, so the tweet, and just to correct, because I know a good friend of mine and also a previous guest here, so I don't want to misconstrue it. He said, I think he's right, but I still do it. So as an LP, do you feel like giving feedback discourages people to come back to you? And then I know for a fact that you give feedback. So that part is done, right?
So let me back up. Yes, giving feedback will discourage some people from coming back to me. I don't want to deal with those people.
Okay.
Because they're not open to listening to what. And by the way, I could be wrong. So I don't care if they follow my feedback.
Yeah.
But if they're not listening to that feedback, they don't want to come back and have more conversations around it. It just means they're not open to being open-minded and hearing feedback, and that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's
and again, just to put a finer point on it, hearing feedback doesn't mean you follow feedback. I mean, I think the worst thing that a company can do is to make it into a company, and I think about it as my board service and Goodwill. The worst thing they can do is a board member says X, and therefore you have to do X. The board member can be wrong. You can be open to hearing it. You can disagree with it, and you can still do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Why is the problem with the receiver? Maybe it was the person giving the feedback that was just doing a poor job.
Could be. I mean, I'm sure I do a poor job often, but it's not. You just have to be. You have to be open-minded to hearing it. You don't have to follow it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem that a lot of founders and GPs make out there is they take the feedback personally, and therefore
I've seen that.
They shrivel up and they go on the defensive rather than, okay, let's try and take whatever feedback as constructive and what's applicable and what's not. And the one thing that I can tell everybody out there, number one, Eric is not an investor in GCVC. Number two, it is wonderful to receive feedback from people like Eric because he doesn't say it's my way or the highway. And I think he acknowledged that there are funds that he's passed on that have been wildly successful, but that were outside of his investment thesis, right?
Wow.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's part of the game, and I think there's something to be said about someone that has conviction in their thesis, whether they're an LP or a GP.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've made lots and lots of mistakes, and I will make lots more mistakes.
What's your biggest mistake?
So my biggest pass,
yeah,
opposed to my biggest mistake, is, well, actually, I'll do both. I'll do biggest mistake, biggest pass. Okay. Biggest pass was passing on Andreessen Horowitz, was called at the time, back in 2012, 2013. That was by far my biggest mistake. Probably my biggest mistake in terms of just capital, initialized capital, fund 2 or fund 3. I passed on both of those, and those were huge mistakes in retrospect. They didn't fit my thesis, and I'm happy with the decision I made because that was, I missed a lot of. I passed on a lot of things that would have lost me a lot of money if I didn't follow.
In the volume of it. Yes. Yeah.
The biggest mistake I made, I received a distribution back in 2000, and I don't know when I received it, but it was Intuitive Surgical, which was a robotic surgical company, and it was trading at the time at like 75 cents, and I immediately sold it. And I think it went up to, if you adjust for splits, I think it went up to like $3,000.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I mean, I think I missed out on like a 4,000x return. So that was my biggest mistake. I was like, I'm going to sell this one.
Yeah. Okay, we have to jump through this because I know we're short on time here. By far, the hardest conversation I have with founders is that what gets funded is heavily influenced by investor preferences. I talk to so many founders who struggle with this reality. Putting an LP lens on and replacing that with GPs instead of founders. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely, it's true. But for me, I just try to explain what I'm looking for, and it's not judgmental. It's like you don't fit in terms of my thesis. You don't fit what I'm looking for. And so it doesn't mean you're not going to be really successful. I mean, let's take Andreessen or Initialized as examples. They were smart what I was looking for at the time. And so it wasn't about whether I was making a judgment that they were going to succeed or fail.
Yeah.
It was about me saying it doesn't fit in terms of my probability matrix.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a really hard conversation, but I'm trying to take the judgment out. And it's like, you're going to be really successful. Lean into your superpower, do what you can do best. Just, I'm sorry, it's not going to be with me on the journey.
Yeah. All right, Bree, do you want to give us a last tweet?
There is so much idol worship in Silicon Valley regarding successful founders and investors, but there's a common denominator for success which is rarely addressed: privilege.
I totally agree. But what I think the common denominator for success is ultimately is resilience and grit.
Okay.
That's what I think creates real success.
Yeah.
And yes, privilege is what gets you access to capital.
Yeah. As an LP, I know you've done a lot as an advisor specifically, because I can to that about helping emerging managers kind of navigate a world of bias amongst LPs, et cetera. What's kind of like the number one way an emerging manager can stick out, where they don't have traction? I'm going to challenge you there here, right? Because I think traction and track record are very important to the way that you evaluate startups, evaluate funds and firms. What do you think is a way that emerging managers can stand out absent the privilege and absent the track record to LPs?
So I don't look at track record as much as I look at experience.
Fair. Yes.
I think failure is really helpful as well as success. But for me, part of my rubric is I'm looking for at least 5 years of investing other people's money.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that people who have spent less time investing other people's money aren't going to be successful. There are a lot of them that are. It's just in a world where there are more than 1,000 emerging managers, I need to find something to separate out those in terms of probabilities.
Yeah.
So I'm not in any way saying that people with less than 5 years of experience can't be successful. And I'm definitely not saying that people who have a bad track record can't be successful. It's a question, if you have a bad track record, what have you learned from it?
Yeah. All right. So a question outside of the game here, and before our penultimate 5 questions that we always ask our guests. Web3 has been a big source of conversation and discourse in the investor ecosystem. And I would be remiss, because I really do want to know what one of the most thoughtful LPs thinks about the Web3 kind of movement. Where do you sit?
Gosh. I think that there's some really thoughtful investors in the Web3 space.
Yeah.
Some of them I think I've invested with. I don't know where we end up. The way we sort of communicate with each other and the way we live our lives is going to be very different in 15 years than it is today. It was very different 15 years ago. I grew up, we didn't even have PCs, let alone cell phones. So there's a lot that's going to change. Is it going to be Web3 and the metaverse and the way people are talking about it?
Yeah.
Maybe, NFTs, there's a lot of NFTs that's just sort of fad, but there's a lot of NFTs that really make sense to me, in terms of understanding real ownership and chain of and real chain of ownership and the like. And so, as an LP, as a venture investor, I think you'd be remiss to not have a portion of your portfolio in what could be the future. I don't know if it's going to end up there or not.
Do you own an NFT?
No.
Okay. All right, Bree. I think it's that time. Is it time for questions?
Yes.
All right. Let's do it.
So, as we've done in our previous seasons, we end each podcast with 5 questions adapted from Chuck Klosterman's Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs, which is a favorite novel of mine, nonfiction. Anyway, we'll get started with the 5 questions. I'll start with the first one. It's the year 2050. Are you living in the metaverse or on Mars?
So let me start with saying I'd be delighted to be living in 2050. So,
you're ageless, Eric.
I'll be over 90 years old. So that'll be. So I do believe I will be, but I'll be delighted. So the question is, will I be living in the metaverse or what?
Or
Colony
Mars?
On Mars, yeah.
I'll be living in the metaverse.
Okay. On your pizza, sun-dried tomatoes or fresh tomatoes?
Fresh tomatoes.
Okay, Jack Dorsey, Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel all come to you with new funds. You can only invest in one. Who do you choose?
Peter Thiel.
Interesting.
I think I know the answer to this next question, which is, can you differentiate between the artist and the artwork?
Yes.
Okay, this is a...
No, I just dramatic pause there because I think that followed on your previous answer with Peter Thiel. So this is fantastic. Okay.
Okay, this one is just 2 names, George Bailey or Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
Wow. Okay, so Bree and I really had a conversation about this. I really thought you were going to pick George Bailey. There you go. Well, look.
George Bailey. Yeah.
He was a soccer coach, so Ted Lasso all the way.
Ted Lasso, yes, all the way on that front. Yeah, absolutely. I think we need more Ted Lasso in our lives. We can all agree on that. Well, you have been
a really positive soccer coach.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
A very positive football coach turned European or world football coach.
Yes, agreed.
Yes.
But
yeah.
That's part of it. I mean, and George Bailey was a lot of positive there too, but yes.
Yeah. And for audience, again, It's a Wonderful Life is an amazing movie. Eric, I think it's one of your favorite movies.
It's my favorite movie. It's my favorite movie.
Yeah.
I will watch that anytime my family will want to watch it with me, which isn't that often.
We always watch it every Christmas. My sister insists on it. So shout out to Anjali.
It's my dad's favorite, so
he really
makes us watch it. Oh yeah, he loves It's a Wonderful Life.
I love it. Look, you've been transparent as always and an amazing guest, and we really appreciate it. With that, we'd like to celebrate you for winning our 5 questions. And can you open up the box that you have in front of you or nearby you.
The box.
Here we go. It's open. So this isn't a surprise because he kind of pre-opened it, but that's okay. What do we have in front of you?
So the shock about the vest was that I thought you guys were going to give me my own logo. You did a Drinks with the VC logo, but my wife has been asking for the Sippel Farb Family Office logo.
Oh, wow.
You guys would come up with a logo.
So I will tell you this. We felt like we were smart cookies and we were productizing this podcast. And
which is great. And so, by the way, when I walk outside, one person in the next 5 years might ask me what Drinks with the VC is. So that's great. That's a great job.
So someone might, and that'd be fantastic. But I think what we've realized, having this previous episode with Jim Dugan and now with you, Eric, we will continue to personalize these vests. and Bree and I actually already have created a personalization. It's a badge that will then be sewn onto your vest.
Oh, thank you.
So that's going to be coming. I can't tell you what it is. I do hope that you post it whenever it comes to you.
How many followers do I have? 105?
116,
yes.
Whatever it might be. Yes. 105. Yeah.
I
But
have more LinkedIn followers, by the way, just so you know.
No. You have way more LinkedIn followers. I know that for a fact. And we just had a ball talking with you today. Thanks for taking the time with us. As we always do, Bree and I would like to have you take a moment to toast us out. And this is your time again to shine light on a startup, a cause, a person, people, anything. This is your 30 seconds, as it were.
So I'm going to toast to San Francisco Bay Area Goodwill, which we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are there are inspire me. Yeah, we didn't talk about all those people there, and specifically to William Rogers, who's our CEO and a really close and dear friend of mine, who inspires our organization. I'm going to toast to him.
Fantastic. Cheers to William Rogers. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Catch full episodes of Drinks with the VC on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, and on YouTube for video. Be sure to subscribe for the latest episode drops.